goes back to the founding when L. Ron Hubbard created the Church of Scientology. He decided to make his headquarters in Hollywood because he had a very perceptive notion that there is something that all Americans really do worship, and it's celebrity. And the capital of celebrity is Hollywood. And he set out very early to make it a Scientology town. And from the very beginning, earliest days in the church, they sent out notices to Scientologists about prospective recruits that they wanted to get in the church. And some of them were hilarious, like J. Edgar Hoover, and but they did get
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney, yeah.
They did a calculation by which they figured out all the people he would have reached either through his movies or appearances or whatever. Figured that he had touched 1 billion people. So he is their key guy, and he is a magnet for people, because very often you'll ask people, what's Scientology? And they say, oh, isn't that the religion with Tom Cruise? So he's their poster boy. By now there is a well-documented record of abuses in the Church of Scientology, and yet Cruise and Travolta have never spoken out about them. So by not speaking out, it's a kind of endorsement. And I think that's why we're right and properly critical.
They're selling a product. And the product they're selling is oppressing some of the people inside the church, especially the clergy, which is called the Sea Org. And Cruz has spent countless hours out at the Sea Org base, where on that same base, where he has a special chateau, there is these double-wide trailers called the Hole, which is a kind of re-education camp where people have been incarcerated for years. Sleeping on the floor on bedrolls with ants crawling around, abused physically, made to lick the floor of the toilet with their tongue. It's just unbelievable degradation, and it's right next to where Tom Cruise is getting his training. If he's ignorant of that, then it's willful on his part.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Cruise is that he's been the beneficiary of this unbelievably low-paid Sea Org labor. These people are being paid 40 cents an hour, and they're tricking out Cruise's cars. They're working on his property. I mean, it's so
his airplane hangar. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Paul was really the vanguard. There were a lot of celebrities that have been in the church and left quietly and never really wanted to make their membership known. Paul was the first to leave loudly. He was angry, and he had good reason to be. And his example, I think, has inspired many other Scientologists to look closely at their religion. And actually, what's so remarkable about Paul's story is that for 35 years, he didn't look. And this is a typical story. You're told not to look on the internet, don't look at anything that's disparaging. And so he never heard a bad word about Scientology for 34 of those 35 years.
It feeds a kind of persecution complex at the very top. One thing I've discovered over time, having done a number of films about abuses of power, is very often the most powerful people are the ones who feel most victimized, particularly by criticism. And so I think at the top it does, but I think the testimony of a lot of these people like Paul and others who have left is actually giving tremendous comfort to many people who have been, roundly abused, and also who may need the courage to leave the church. Because one of the hardest things in leaving the church is to be able to recognize that you've made such a terrible mistake for so long, and to internalize that to the extent that you can look at yourself in the morning and believe in yourself now going forward. And I think the example of Paul and others is really helping that happen.
And just to say, for Paul and other celebrities, it's very hard to leave, but the people that are in the Sea Org, some of them, joined when they were children. And I'm saying children, some of them 6 or 7 years old, and they sign a contract for 1 billion years of service. They're, paid less than $50 a week for they sacrifice their education, and if they decide to leave, they're impoverished, they're uneducated, they may not have very many job skills, and they may leave behind their families, their friends, everybody they know. So for them, the act of leaving, and some of the people we talked to, they had to escape. You don't just walk away. They had to flee, and some of them were captured and brought back. For those people, it's really, really difficult.
I mean, one of the things, the victory that Scientology achieved through the leadership of David Miscavige was making the knees of the IRS buckle. And I think if somebody like Senator Wyden or others have sufficient willpower and see what a terrible thing it is that all of us American citizens are effectively subsidizing these ongoing abuses, then maybe there'll be the will to do something about it. Because I'm fairly certain that a diligent investigation into the Church of Scientology would reveal that it's not being run as a religion, it's being run as a business, very often to benefit one or two people, probably one in particular at the very top. You know, I issued a statement about it, but I'll say it again, and it's in the film. We reached out for interviews with the people that were relevant to our story. Scientology wanted to send us a delegation of 25 unidentified individuals, presumably to smear the people who were in our film. I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in speaking to people on the subjects of the film and our stories. Also, we encouraged the Church of Scientology to send us relevant documents that hadn't already been provided to Larry and his research team. They declined to do so.